Ever wish you could just like try on different identities, like clothes? I feel like
Oh,
that's part of what makes VR chat so appealing.
It is.
Like you can be anyone you want.
Mm-hmm.
Our listeners, you send us these fascinating conversations between two VR chat users, Spartan and Snowy, and
Yes.
they really get into the psychology of it all.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing a deep dive into their conversations, talking about things like virtual identity.
Yeah.
Where's the line between our online and offline selves?
Right.
And can VR chat actually help us become better people?
It's interesting because right away, Spartan's honesty really stood out to me.
Yeah.
He talks about how his online persona that he very carefully crafted as like a professional
Uh-huh.
started to like bleed into his real life interactions.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how these virtual worlds can have these like unexpected impacts on us.
It's not just a game.
No.
And Snowy had this great line that really stuck with me. He said, when a man is in the light, he won't show you who you are. But if you give him a mask and put him in the dark, he'll show you who he truly is.
Hmm.
It's like VR chat can be that mask, right?
Right.
It gives you that anonymity to experiment with different sides of yourself.
Yeah, and explore those.
But then where's the line between exploration and like Spartan worries about disassociation?
Exactly. And they both touch on how crafting these idealized avatars can be a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
So on one hand, you can experiment with confidence and explore new ways of interacting and maybe even work through some insecurities.
Right.
But then there's the risk of becoming so attached to that virtual self that you lose touch with who you are in the real world.
And it was interesting because they brought up this trend they noticed about people creating these hypersexualized avatars.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder, listener, could this be a way of trying to get validation or attention that they feel like they're lacking in real life?
It really makes you think about the psychology behind those choices.
It does.
And it makes Spartan's concern about disassociation hit even harder.
Yeah.
Because he has this theory that unresolved emotional issues from childhood, especially if someone doesn't have healthy coping mechanisms, can make them more prone to using virtual worlds as an escape.
It's heavy, but it does seem like some people are using VR chat as a way to avoid their real life problems instead of facing them head on.
Right.
But here's what I find fascinating.
Okay.
They also talk about how some people are actually more honest and kind online than they are in person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that digital barrier allows them to tap into like a better version of themselves.
This is fascinating.
So that raises such an interesting question for self-improvement.
What's that?
Can we learn to translate those positive online traits into our offline lives?
That's a good question.
Could VR chat almost be like a training ground for being a better person?
I like that.
But Spartan also brings up this statistic that is pretty sobering.
Oh.
He said that male suicides have risen by nearly 13% in the past 5 years. Now, I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that VR chat is causing that,
Yeah.
but it does make you think about the importance of mental health and seeking help if you need it.
It does.
What do you think, listener? Do you see a connection between spending a lot of time online and mental health?
It's a complex issue for sure.
It is.
And when it comes to relationships in VR chat, Spartan and Snowy actually break it down into 3 levels.
Okay.
You've got acquaintances, friendly and then intimate, and they're very clear that they're talking about non-sexual intimacy here.
Got it.
But they talk about how hard it is to actually build genuine friendships in VR chat.
Yeah.
They use the word transactional to describe a lot of the interactions.
It makes me think about just how fast things move online in general.
Right.
It's like constantly swiping through profiles.
Yeah.
You're always bombarded with new people.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it hard to slow down and cultivate deeper connections.
For sure.
Makes you think, listener, do you approach online friendships differently than real-life ones?
It's a great question, and I think it's at the heart of what Spartan and Snowy are wrestling with.
Yeah.
They both agree that good friends, whether virtual or in person, should challenge you to grow and be there for you during tough times.
Mm-hmm.
And that resonates with me. Real support goes beyond just fleeting interactions.
Absolutely. Spartan even admits that he's felt more accepted in the virtual world than in real life. But he says that's what motivates him to focus on self-improvement.
Yeah,
He wants to bridge that gap.
I see.
And it's a good reminder that we all have the power to work on ourselves and become the kind of people who attract genuine connections, both online and offline.
I like that.
Now, here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Spartan claims that genuine friendships can't be transactional, but Snowy pushes back and suggests that even true connection involves some level of give and take.
Interesting.
What do you think, listener? Can a genuine friendship be transactional?
I'm leaning towards Snowy side on this one.
I'm with you. I think they're both onto something.
Yeah.
But that line can get blurry. We've all had those friendships that you felt very one-sided.
Right.
And those are definitely not genuine.
No.
But in a healthy friendship, there's a natural reciprocity.
Yes.
This sense of mutual support and care.
Exactly. And it's about the intention behind the giving.
Mm.
If it's about genuinely wanting to nurture the relationship rather than keeping score, then maybe a little transaction can actually strengthen the bond.
For sure.
It all comes back to intention, doesn't it? And this leads perfectly into their discussion of attachment theory.
Oh, yeah. Attachment theory.
So it's this fascinating field of psychology that looks at how our early childhood experiences actually shape the way we form and maintain relationships.
Throughout our lives.
Throughout our lives.
I'm so fascinated by this stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, it says that the way we were cared for as kids,
Right.
it really influences how we approach intimacy,
Right.
trust, all that good stuff.
It really does.
So Spartan and Snowy are applying this to VRchat,
Okay.
suggesting that the fast-paced nature of online interactions can create these really intense but often fleeting attachments. Almost like virtual relationships get put on fast forward.
Right.
So they might feel more dramatic, more intense,
Yeah.
but potentially more fragile as well.
Exactly. And Spartan argues that a lot of VRchat relationships prioritize that instant gratification. They lack the depth and commitment that you often find in real-world connections.
Right, because those are built over time,
Yeah.
shared experiences.
Exactly.
He actually tells this story about a VRchat couple who had a very public and messy breakup
Oh, no.
because of infidelity.
Wow.
It just highlights how even in a virtual world, trust and commitment are still crucial for healthy relationships.
I guess so.
Have you ever had an online friendship, listener, that just kind of fizzled out?
Oh, yeah.
I know I have. And it can still sting even if you never met the person in real life.
It's a good point.
It's a reminder that we're wired for connection no matter the medium.
Yeah.
And that's why Spartan and Snowy are such big advocates for mindfulness.
Mindful.
They believe that being able to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment is key.
Okay.
Not just for navigating VRchat, but for life in general.
Yeah.
It's about becoming more self-aware.
Self-awareness.
They even offer some great advice on how to shift from that negative self-talk we all experience
Right.
to more positive affirmations.
I like that.
Snowy has this analogy that I absolutely love.
Oh, yeah.
He says, treat your brain like a child that you need to nurture. It's so simple, but it really drives home the point that we need to be kind to ourselves.
And you?
It's about cultivating self-compassion.
It is.
And one really practical tip they offer is to externalize your negative thoughts.
Oh, okay. How do you do that?
Snowy suggests asking yourself, would I say these things to a friend or a child?
That's a good point.
Imagine saying to someone you love, you're a failure. You'll never amount to anything.
Right.
You would never.
Never.
So why do we talk to ourselves that way?
That's a good point.
It's a powerful way to challenge those destructive thought patterns.
They-
They also emphasize the importance of replacing those negative thoughts with positive affirmations.
Okay.
So instead of dwelling on your flaws,
Yeah.
consciously remind yourself of your strengths, your accomplishments, the things you're grateful for. It's about intentionally shifting your mindset.
I see.
They stress that it takes effort and consistency,
Right.
but the rewards are worth it.
For sure.
By being mindful of our thoughts and choosing to focus on the positive, we can boost our self-esteem, reduce anxiety, and create a more optimistic and resilient outlook on life.
That's powerful stuff.
What stands out to you about all this, listener?
Yeah.
Are you someone who struggles with negative self-talk?
I think a lot of us do.
I think so too.
And what Spartan and Snowy are highlighting is that our thoughts have power.
They do.
They can either lift us up or they can hold us back.
Yeah.
So choosing to cultivate positive self-talk isn't just some fluffy feel-good practice.
Right.
It's a crucial part of personal growth.
I completely agree.
Now, they also talk about how anonymity can impact behavior and authenticity in VRchat.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
It's fascinating how people often feel more free to be themselves online, for better or worse.
It's true.
The digital barrier can be liberating.
It can.
They point out that it can help people overcome social anxieties and inhibitions,
Yeah.
allowing them to express themselves in ways they might not feel comfortable doing face-to-face.
Like that shy person in real life who suddenly becomes this confident performer or leader in VRchat.
Exactly.
But they also acknowledge that this freedom can embolden some individuals to engage in negative behaviors,
Oh, right.
like trolling, harassment, or even hate speech things they'd never dream of doing in person.
It's true.
It's almost like the anonymity gives them a sense of invincibility,
Yeah,
and they forget that there's a real person on the other side of the screen.
that's a good point.
And that's why cultivating mindfulness and self-awareness is so crucial in these online spaces.
It is.
We need to be conscious of how our virtual actions affect others,
Right.
just as we would in the real world.
Right, like it's still the real world.
It is, they talk about building a positive and supportive VRchat community,
Uh-huh.
which makes me think about our responsibility as users.
Our responsibility.
Even though it's virtual, our words and actions still have consequences.
They do.
It's about taking ownership of our behavior
Yeah,
and recognizing that even in these virtual spaces, we're part of a community.
we are.
They suggest that one way to combat the potential pitfalls of anonymity is to think of VRchat as a reward.
A reward.
Yeah, a reward for real-world self-improvement efforts.
Okay.
It's like saying, okay, I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to work on that project. I'm going to have a difficult conversation.
Right.
Then I can enjoy some time in VRchat.
I like that.
It turns VRchat into a motivational tool.
It does.
Instead of using it to escape, you're using it to celebrate your accomplishments in real life.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance. It makes me think about how we define success in the context of these virtual worlds. Is it about accumulating virtual wealth or status?
Right.
Or is it about using those virtual experiences to fuel personal growth in the real world?
That's a good question.
What are your thoughts on that, listener?
Yeah.
Makes you think about what we really value, right?
It does.
Both online and offline. And Spartan Snowy touched on this idea of VRchat almost being like a microcosm of our real-world struggles.
Oh, interesting.
Whether it's relationships, identity, or self-improvement.
Right.
These themes are universal.
Yeah.
It's like VRchat just kind of amplifies them.
I see that.
And they keep coming back to this idea of mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
It's like no matter what world you're in, being self-aware and intentional with your thoughts and actions is key.
It's so important.
It's about making those conscious choices
Right.
instead of just getting swept up in the current.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to that question we were talking about earlier
Yeah.
about the differences between online and offline relationships.
Okay.
We talked about how intentionality plays a bigger role online.
Uh-huh.
You're often choosing to connect with people based on shared interests or goals.
Right.
But what about the actual quality of those relationships?
Right.
Can they be as deep and meaningful as the ones we build in the real world?
That's a tough one.
It is.
I think Spartan and Snowy would agree that real-world connections often have this, richness and complexity.
A depth.
Yeah, it's hard to replicate online.
Mm-hmm.
It's the shared experiences, the nonverbal cues, the subtle ways we learn to read each other.
Right.
Those things can be harder to pick up on in a virtual setting.
That makes sense. But I also think online relationships can offer something unique.
Okay.
Like for people who feel isolated or misunderstood in their offline lives, finding a community online can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It can give them a sense of belonging and validation that they might not be getting elsewhere.
Absolutely. And for people with social anxieties or disabilities that make it hard to connect in person, virtual worlds can be incredibly liberating.
For sure.
It's about expanding our definition of what a meaningful connection can look like.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Thanks.
It's not about saying one type of relationship is better than the other.
Right.
It's about recognizing that both online and offline connections can enrich our lives.
Yeah.
In different ways.
In different ways.
And as with any relationship, open communication, mutual respect, a willingness to put in the effort.
Those are key.
Those are key. And, thinking back to Spartan and Snowy's conversation, the thing that really sticks with me is this.
What's that?
No matter what world we're in, virtual or real, self-improvement is an ongoing journey.
It is.
It's about being mindful of our thoughts and actions.
Right.
Cultivating positive habits and striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
The best versions of ourselves and surrounding ourselves with people,
Yes.
both online and offline, who support that growth.
Yes.
People who challenge us to be better, who celebrate our wins, and who offer a helping hand when we stumble.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you.
Listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought
We do.
as you navigate these increasingly blurred lines between the virtual and real world.
Yes.
Remember, you have the power to choose how you show up, how you connect, and how you grow,
That's right.
no matter what world you're in.
It's true.